Hi, it's PJ here, and thanks for attending our presentation today. We really appreciate you sharing your time with us. As someone who is evaluating this remarkable opportunity here at the Cash Tracking System, I want to congratulate you. Right now, you're at the very beginning of the road to complete time and financial freedom. In the next two presentations, we're going to review in detail exactly how the receiving lines work here, so you can gain a good understanding of how leverage can create a significant amount of referred cash for you. We'll also talk about the different levels of participation and the various entry options available, so you'll be able to make an informed decision as to which option will best suit you. Let's begin with the receiving lines. The person labeled you on your screen is obviously you. For the moment, let's presume you joined at the $3,500 level for ease of explanation. We'll review the other levels of participation in Step 4. You've joined our private organization at the Cash Tracking System, you've sent your pledge off to your inviter, and you want to get started receiving cash. The first person who joins through your invitation is your qualifier, who is shown on the diagram to the left of you. That's your one-up. Everyone is required to give up their first person to their inviter to earn the right to begin receiving cash. Your qualifier sends his or her pledge directly to your inviter, and you are now qualified to receive cash for life. There are no quotas or minimum levels of activity here. You're now permanently qualified to receive cash no matter how much or how little you choose to work this program. Now the fun begins. The second person you invite is Alan, and Alan begins your first receiving line. Alan sends his pledge directly to you by overnight courier, and he's ready to begin inviting people into the program. Now, Alan can't receive any cash until he gets his one-up qualifier, so Alan invites Bob. Bob is Alan's qualifier, so Bob's pledge goes directly to you, since you're qualified to receive cash and you're Alan's inviter. At this point, our software allows Alan to break away and begin his own receiving lines. Alan is now qualified to receive cash for life, and anyone that he invites from this moment forward, the cash will go directly to him. But remember, Bob is your person. He's placed on your receiving line because he was Alan's qualifier. That's the one-up in action. Now let's just review what's happened so far. You joined at $3,500, you sent off your pledge to your inviter, and you invited your first person who was your qualifier. You then invited one additional person, Alan, who sent his pledge directly to you. And Alan invited Bob, who also sent his pledge to you. You have now received $7,000 by inviting only two people into the program, your qualifier and Alan. Remember, there are no fat cats here getting any of your cash. It all flows directly to you. This way, we're able to create a level playing field for everyone, and you can receive as much cash as you're willing to work for, no matter when you join. So let's get back to Bob, since Bob wants to begin receiving cash. Now to do that, Bob needs to get his qualifier. So Bob invites Cindy. Since Cindy is Bob's qualifier and Bob is on your receiving line, Cindy sends her pledge directly to you, and she's placed on your receiving line. Bob is now qualified for life to receive cash, and he is now able to begin his own receiving lines. Now think about what's happened for a moment. You've now received $10,500, $3,500 each from Alan, Bob, and Cindy, and you've only invited two people into the program, your qualifier and Alan. Are you beginning to see how leverage is starting to work for you? But it gets even better. Cindy needs a qualifier, doesn't she? So she invites Dan, who sends his pledge directly to you. Dan then needs a qualifier, so Dan invites Ed, who also sends his pledge directly to you. This receiving line keeps going the same way to infinity, and it all started with you simply inviting Alan. But it gets even better. You see, this is just one receiving line. While all this is happening on your first receiving line, you're still inviting new people into the program yourself. You invite John, who is shown right beside Cindy. Now, John is actually only the third person you have personally invited, and he begins your second receiving line, and exactly the same scenario is duplicated. John sends his pledge to you and then gets a qualifier. That person gets a qualifier, and on to infinity. All of those pledges go directly to you, just like they did on your first receiving line. Then you personally invite Sue, who is shown beside John. And Sue begins your third receiving line, and this process is duplicated again. Now here's the good news. You can have as many receiving lines as you want. Just invite more people. That's what that arrow beside Sue that says receive to infinity refers to. But here's the real magic of receiving lines. Earlier, I used the term referred cash. That's a term I use to describe the cash that comes to you with each qualifier, and that's the best kind of cash. Why? Well, because someone else has done most of the work in generating that cash, but all the cash went to you. Now, to really understand this concept, let's go back to Alan for a moment. Alan invited Bob, who sent his pledge directly to you. But Alan contacted Bob and invited him to review our website and help them get his questions answered, not you. Oh, you may have spoken to Bob briefly as an introduction, but the vast majority of the work, if not all of the work with Bob, was done by Alan, not by you. And it's the same with every person on your receiving line. That's why you can have so many receiving lines going at one time. Because once they get started, they literally perpetuate themselves with very little of your involvement. That's what makes the one-up a remarkably simple but enormously powerful system. Now, once you hear this a few times and you really understand this concept, you can't help but get excited. I'll bet you're getting excited right now. It works, and it can work for anyone. Why? Because you don't have to do any of the explaining or question answering. This website and these presentations will do all of that for you. If you can speak in complete sentences, if you can dial a telephone, if you can send an email, you can do this. In Step 4, we'll review the different levels of participation at the cash tracking system and how they work. Simply click on the Step 4 link at the bottom of the page to begin that presentation.